Alrighty, hi Anatomy. I hope you're having a good day so far. We are jumping right into our first unit of the semester, which is the nervous system. You should be receiving or already have received your first packet already for today. And this packet includes your vocab for the unit, what you need to be able to do for the project, a diagram of the entire system, including a picture of what an axon looks like, and your worksheet for the rest of this week. You will also need to have out paper to take notes, which will come after we discuss the packet. So please make sure you have everything out ready to go, and I'll give you just a second to do that. Make sure you have everything out, and we're going to start today by going over the vocab that is listed below. These terms will be used throughout the unit, so you do need to be familiar with them. Okay, first up is action potential. Action potential is the change in electrical potential associated with the passage of an impulse along the membrane of a muscle cell or nerve cell. Axon, which you're going to hear a lot of today, is the longer process that carries the information away from the cell in the form of a bioelectrical signal or impulse. An axon hillock is the initial segment of an axon from the cell body. Axon terminal is the end of a neuron that makes synaptic connections with another nerve cell or an effector cell, which is a muscle cell or a gland cell, through the use of neurotransmitter release. Sorry about the bell. Okay. Next up, conductivity, ability to transmit an impulse from one structure to the next. Chemoreceptor, also known as a chemosensor, which is a specialized sensory receptor cell which transduces or converts a chemical substance, then generates a biological signal. Dendrites are small cellular processes that receive input. Enzymes are a substance produced by a living organism which acts as a catalyst to bring about a specific biochemical reaction. Enzymatic breakdown is a process in which an enzyme binds to the neurotransmitter and breaks it apart so that the neurotransmitter can no longer fit into a receptor on the receiving cell. Irritability, not irritability like you get irritated with me or you get irritated with each other. Irritability for the nervous system is the ability to respond to a stimuli and convert it into an impulse. Okay. Lipofuscin, or fuscin, I just say lipofuscin. Any of several brown pigments similar to melanin that accumulate in animal cells with age and are products of oxidation of lipids and lipoproteins. This may come up much later in the unit, but this is not going to be one that's like super high priority. I'll let you know that. Mechanoreceptors are a sense organ or cell that responds to mechanical stimuli such as touch or sound. Myelin is very important. Myelin is a lipid or fatty material that forms a sheath-like covering around some axons. Neurolemma is the thin sheath around a nerve axon, including myelin, where this is present. So it's kind of like the outside wrapping of the myelin. Neuroglia are specialized cells of the nervous system that produce myelin, maintain the ionic environment, provide growth factors that support neurons, provide structural support, and play a role in cell-to-cell communication. Neuroglia are very important to this unit and to the next unit. Neurons are conducting nerve cells. Moving up. Neurotransmitters are a chemical that an axon secretes into a synaptic cleft that stimulates or inhibits an effector or other neuron. So neurotransmitters are actually like the different chemicals that the nerve secretes. So don't think that when we say neurotransmitters, it's like the actual electrical impulse. Okay. Nociceptor is a sensory receptor that sends signals that cause the perception of pain in response to potentially damaging stimulus. node of Ranvier, and yes, it is said the French way, I'm not just being silly with it, are microscopic gaps between the myelinated axons. You'll learn about those today. Oligodendrocytes, yes, big word, oligodendrocyte is a type of neuroglia whose main functions are to provide support and insulation to axons in the central nervous system. Okay. Photoreceptors are the cells in the retina that respond to light. So this is how you can see light versus dark. Postsynaptic membrane is a membrane that receives a signal from the presynaptic cell and responds via depolarization. That we're going to be covering, I think, early next week. Presynaptic membrane is the cell membrane of an axon terminal that faces the receiving cell. Receptors are an organ or cell able to respond to light, heat, or other external stimulus and transmit a signal to a sensory nerve. So receptors are how we actually interact with the outside world, outside of our bodies. Okay? Reuptake is a process in which a neurotransmitter is taken back up into the axon terminal that released it so that the neurotransmitter is no longer available to fill the receptor on the receiving cell. Saltatory conduction is rapid impulse conduction along a myelinated axon that travels from one node to the next. Schwann cell, aka a neurolemma cell, or any of the cells in the peripheral nervous system that produce myelin sheath around axons. Sorry, need to move up. A synapse is a junction between two nerve cells consisting of a minute gap across which impulses pass by diffusion of a neurotransmitter. Synaptic cleft is the space between neurons at a nerve synapse across which a nerve impulse is transmitted by a neurotransmitter. Synaptic knob is one of many terminal endpoints on a neuron's axon. Thermoreceptor is a non-specialized sense receptor, or accurately the receptive portion of a sensory neuron that codes absolute and relative changes in temperature. And then last but not least for the vocab is a vesicle, which is a small fluid-filled bladder. I can't talk today, guys. Bladder, sac, cyst, or vacuole within the body. Okay? This unit should last us about 6 school days, so that means we're going to be moving on to the next unit, which is kind of a continuation of this one. It's just a little bit more specialized. We will be moving on to that the short week of January 1st. That week, remember, we have Monday off due to a holiday, and then that Friday off due to stock show. Okay, so that week is only 3 days. Woohoo! There will not be a test at the end of this unit, the one that I just read the vocab for, because the next unit also deals with the nervous system, so I'm just going to combine the 2 tests together. Make it kind of easier, make it so we can review everything together and not have to take out 2 whole days to do the tests. Okay? You will still have a short quiz this Friday and next Friday, but like last semester, these are really short compared to the tests. They're just so I can make sure that you're actually understanding what's going on. You will have a short project starting next week. And in order to do well on this project, you will need to be able to do the following, which is listed on your little packet thing under the vocab. It's things you need to know how to do for the project. You do need to know how different substances can affect normal synaptic transmission. You need to know what happens at the synaptic cleft when these substances interfere with normal transmission, and you have to be able to diagram the synaptic cleft. Okay? We will be covering these things in class, so don't think that I'm just telling you, hey, you need to go look these up on your own. We're going to cover them in class to make sure that you're paying attention. Okay, so I have switched my program so I can do the notes with you. I am going to be typing these so you can actually see these out. The notes may or may not be posted. I know the video will be posted, but we'll work together on this. Okay? So what is our nervous system? That's kind of our question for the next couple of weeks. with this unit and our next unit. Think of your body kind of as a biological machine that is run by electricity. And yeah, I'm talking about like the electricity that goes through your light bulbs and to your computer and whatever you have that runs on electricity. In fact, our body does run on electricity and impulses or signals that run throughout your body. Your brain and your nervous system are the communication systems that control, receive, and read these signals. We don't glow like light bulbs because the electrical charges that flow through our bodies are super tiny. It would be kind of cool if we glowed, though. So in order to better understand how our bodies send and receive these signals, we break down the nervous system into two divisions. We have the CNS, or the central nervous system. And then we have the PNS, which is the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so you have the two of those. The CNS consists of your brain and spinal cord, and that's it. The PNS, or the peripheral nervous system, is the nerves throughout the rest of your body. So all the nerves that run through your chest cavity, your arms, your legs, and more. We're going to be going into more details about these two divisions later on in the week. Okay. In the nervous system, there are two categories of tissues. And apparently I can't type today again. I know I tell you guys this all the time, but I'm working on it. Okay, so two categories of tissues. These are neuroglia and neurons. Okay, neuroglia are also known as glial cells. These perform support functions. Okay, and in the CNS, there are four types. Not $ types. 4 types of different neuroglia. Okay, these are astrocytes. Astrocytes are the most prevalent. They account for nearly half of all neural tissue in the body, and they're located between neurons and capillaries, which protect the neurons from any harmful substances in the blood. So any sickness, any of the viruses, if somebody does drugs, it's going to be filtered out through these astrocytes, so they don't actually harm your nervous system. Next up are microglia. Microglia are kind of like our trash collectors. They dispose of dead cells and bacteria. Okay. We have epidermal. Epidermal neuroglia, I can't talk, which form a protective covering around the spinal cord and the central cavities of the brain to make sure that nothing bad's coming in and the good thing stay in and stay around where they're supposed to be. And then last but not least, we have this big old word, oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes. Okay. These wrap around nerve fibers and produce myelin. Okay, so they make sure that your cells have the cushion that they need. In the PNS, there are two types of neuroglia. Okay. These two types are called Schwann cells. Schwann cells they form the myelin sheaths around the nerve fibers in the PNS, and then we also have satellite cells, which serve as cushioning and support cells in the PNS. Okay, moving on to the second type of tissues, we have neurons. I'll move up just a little bit so you can see that, because I know the bottom cuts off. And neurons are the cells that transmit the information in the form of nerve impulses throughout the body. So that electricity that I was talking about just a little bit ago that runs through you, these are the cells that carry those charges throughout the body. Each neuron consists of a cell body surrounded by branching dendrites. Okay, these dendrites are what kind of receive the signals. The neuron also has this long tail-like thing attached to it called an axon, which you may or may not have heard of. The cell bodies they look kind of like regular cells. They have a nucleus and mitochondria. Okay, so they do have their own little power sites with the mitochondria. Dendrites, like I said before, they collect the stimuli and transport information to the cell body. The cell body kind of holds on to it and says, hey, this needs to be passed on. And so the information gets sent from the cell body down through the axons, and the axons take that information that was in the cell body and they send it along to the next neuron. Okay, there's a picture of what an axon on page 4 of the little packet that you got this morning, or when you first got into class. Okay? In the PNS, the Schwann cells, they wrap these axons in what is called the myelin sheath. This myelin sheath is a fatty tissue that insulates and protects the neuron. And by insulating it and protecting it, it allows our signals to flow through the axon faster and more efficiently. Myelin is super important, and the lack of myelin can have some serious consequences, but we'll go more into that later. Okay, so back to those Schwann cells. Outside of the myelin that the Schwann cells produce is called neurolemma. Let's making sure I was spelling that right. Neurolemma just kind of wraps the myelin sheath and keeps it where it's supposed to be. So to review, Schwann cells are wrapped around the axon, they produce the myelin sheath, and are in turn covered with the neurolemma. Okay. Now these Schwann cells don't wrap all the way around the axon. They can't cover the whole thing. So in between the Schwann cells and the myelin, there are these little spaces that are called the nodes of Ranvier. I know it has R at the end, but we pronounce it the French way, not fresh way. French way, okay? These gaps are uninsulated and they are exposed. So you can just see that it kind of looks like a little pillow, and then there's a gap and then another little pillow. The pillow is the myelin, and the gaps are these nodes of Ranvier. At the end of each axon, there are axon terminals. And the way to kind of think about axon terminals is to think of an airport and think of the terminals in an airport. The spaces that branch off the main building in an airport where the planes can unload and load passengers are called terminals. And with axons, it's kind of similar. The terminals are where the information that the cell received through the dendrites move on to the next axon. Okay, so that's where they're sending the information out. These terminals do not actually touch the next axon, or sorry, the next neuron. See, even I get confused with it. They do not touch the next neuron. There's this little gap in between, okay? But in the axon terminals, the terminals are filled with tiny vesicles. And these vesicles hold neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are chemicals that carry the signal. We will be going over a lot more of what happens here in this area tomorrow, or maybe even the next day, depending on how far you get today. But these neurotransmitters are sent from one neuron to the other across what is called the synaptic cleft. Okay. The synaptic cleft is this little tiny, like microscopic break between the first neuron and the second neuron, because they don't actually touch. Okay. The entire section, the end of the axon terminals, the synaptic cleft, and the new neuron is called a synapse. So if you've ever heard of a synapse, it's referring to this entire little section that's going on. So to kind of review, I know it's throwing a lot of info at you. Dendrites get a message from either another neuron, a muscle cell, what have you. So dendrites get that information. The dendrites then take that information, that message, and they bring it to the cell body. From the cell body, that pushes the message down the axon to the axon terminals, which activate the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters go across the synaptic cleft to the dendrites of another axon. And that's how the message gets from one cell to another. Okay. Now, there are different neurons for different types of messages. We're almost done, I promise. There are 3 different types, to be precise. So 3 different types of neurons. Okay. There are sensory, or afferent, if I could spell. Afferent neurons, which carry messages from your skin and your organs to your spinal cord and your brain. So this is how we actually interact with the outside world. And these neurons contain information about your internal and external environments. Then there are motor, or efferent neurons, which are kind of the opposite of sensory neurons. They take the message from your brain and your spinal cord and they send it out to the rest of your body. Now, those neurons that are in the middle, they're kind of just there to send and receive and to make sure the message gets passed on. Those are called interneurons, or association neurons. Okay, last little bit for today, because I know you're probably losing focus. You probably already have, but we're almost there, okay? So there are 3 different shapes of neurons. There are bipolar neurons. And bipolar neurons are shorter, and they have 1 dendrite and 1 axon. And these are sensory processing, and they're found in the eyes and the nose. We also have unipolar neurons. And unipolar neurons are kind of weird looking. They have 1 axon with dendrites on one end and axon terminals on the other end. I would recommend looking this one up, looking a picture of it, how it looks. The cell body isn't just in the middle of it. It kind of branches off and it's kind of attached to the side. It looks kind of weird. But these neurons carry impulses to the cell body, and they're just kind of there to transmit information. And then last but not least, the one that you actually already have a picture of is the multipolar neurons. This one is the picture on page 4 of your little packet. Okay, and these have one axon and multiple dendrites, so they can receive messages from multiple places, but they only have one output. All motor neurons and interneurons are multipolar, so these are the ones that you see throughout the body. Okay, that is it for today. Please make sure to answer the question on your worksheet. You may need to look up the 3 different types of neurons to actually see what they look like in order to answer the question, but make sure that you are doing all of the different parts that I asked you to label. Have a great day, guys.